It's so easy to follow. Because I think there's a little Winnie Mandela in all of us. There is a sense that we too, maybe in our own spaces, have been silenced. That we've got so many stories that we've not been able to tell. That we ourselves have been made to doubt ourselves. And in a very, very small, minuscule manner, that resonated because I do know how, even with the spaces and the space that I occupy right now, I too doubt myself. And I too want to look back and see if this is all going to end one day and that I'm not in the space that I should be. And so to look back and look at Dani was an idea for me that was really a compelling one. But I must say that what I saw today was an amazing experience of what happens when you just open your mind to an idea. Because it only took 3 months from the time the idea was born for Bongani and I to be sitting in Johannesburg, having invited Gail Smith to come in and help us think about this idea, sitting in a boardroom and really listening to her, who herself says that she really got to a point of depression in just writing about this phenomenon woman, and realizing that when you have an idea and you open yourself up to others, you need not worry about what that idea would look like. And soon enough, we called on to incredible filmmakers. When I think about just every other person who pitched, every other person who we met when we did the interviews, and every other idea we went through, you really, for me, it shows me how we multiplied. It showed me just how so many of us here are pregnant and have something to birth. And how we can be each other's midwives to birth ideas. Every film that we saw today, every film that, and we had the pleasure of seeing it on paper first, and everybody that came and they pitched something so dear and so close to them. And one of the panels today spoke about the emotional labor that women do, and wow, it was such a labor of love for each and every one of you to bring forth the films that embedded the kind of conversations and dialogues that we had. When I saw Mama Nora today, sitting there, I just couldn't help but just realize what a blessing it is to be in this space with incredible women like her. And I really want to thank you, Mama, from the bottom of my heart. And you may not realize it, but the idea that you may not be seen is so deep. It's so deep when you are a black girl to know that yours is also just a struggle to see. And I think in that panel as well, somebody spoke about, seeing the women who don't write. But what Mama spoke about was seeing this woman, and she says in one of the films, I was just helping a woman who was going through adversity. And it really spoke to me because I asked myself, And I think when you occupy these positions, we are seen, hey, I'm in front, you know, and you make sure you look good. But how many women am I not seeing? And how much do we walk past each other in our different adversities and not see each other? And so for me, it is remarkable it's such a gift to hear Mama Nora said, you know, I was told she's dangerous, you know? It's like when you are single at 50 like myself, and you listen to people, balaya, I don't know what's the liar in English, married women, and they say, you must never be seen with single women. And you know they are talking about it. So that idea of being the other is such a narrative that we grow up with. For some of us who've got children from 2 different fathers, it could have been 3, could have been 4, you know, if we had gone on in this journey. When people and aunties would be talking in the kitchen and saying, that one with choice assorted children. Yes. And you know they are talking about this. So the idea of being the other and being seen, it's such an amazing story. Yeah, I could go on.
And I think today, you know, what really struck me in the conversation with Candice was talking about what it means to be dangerous, what it means to rebel, what it means to be defiant. And I think that you said something in that conversation that I think was really profound and landed with me about the question of cost and the question of not romanticizing these ideas, but realizing what is required. I loved how much, because we're grounded in this idea of care work, how much we were talking about labor and about community at the same time. I don't know how many times today I heard, how do we hold each other? And I think that, you know, for many of us, it's the first time we've been around this many people. But we really get the sense that, you know, like was said in the earlier conversation on mind work, this idea of our resilience lying in organizing has really struck me as part of a new generation thinking about how do we carry feminist work forward? How do we multiply? And how do we do so meaningfully? And I think what each of the films showed is the power of something that feels very intangible when we speak about storytelling, but something we can only feel when we experience it. And I think that's what each of those films brought through. One of the really powerful films I want to reflect on is the film about the banishment of Brantford.
Yeah.
And I think that that's where history came alive today for me. Because I come from knowing Brantford, knowing when he went there, but today we recontextualize that, I felt, for many people in the room. That was away from the masculinist, patriarchal reading of banishment to a place where she created care work, where she practiced her social work, where she lived out an ethic that we can hear that someone who was deemed dangerous was someone who was restoring the community.
You know, so for me, I mean, both those films and both those conversations were about really unlearning and relearning. And I think, you know, when Sisonke said, you know, Brantford did not break her, she broke Brantford. It really stuck to me about just how many of us are not retelling even our own history and our own stories about how the systems that were meant to break us, we broke. And I think for me, just rethinking how we also retell our story is quite telling. I also hadn't really thought of the brutality of apartheid, where they would bomb where really we were. And there is an image in the films, just the minute I saw them, and I really want to thank the filmmakers, and it's all in my head, I don't remember which one belongs to which filmmaker, where you see Winnie with children. And I just remember how complicit some of us had been in the fucking Stompy narrative. Where in fact the apartheid government never cared about the black child. But they weaponized a black boy whom they did not know to demonize a black boy. And so for me today, when I just saw that image of her surrounded by children, you know, and I think there was, to her right, there was even one child who was almost touching her head. You know, I was just like, oh my goodness. Narrative and who controls narrative is such a powerful one. You know, of all the things that I do in my life, I wish that all I did was to create opportunities like today where we are retelling stories, because that is such a powerful image of seeing Winnie when it was not glamorous to do so, when she did not even know whether her husband would come out of jail, when she did not even know where her own children were. But we all got this narrative of this woman by people who killed black children, black men and black women, but to position her. And I think, I don't remember who said it, whether I'm imagining it or not, but the idea that you then bestow upon her the mother of the nation, and then thereafter, like a puppet controller, when it suits you, you basically say, well, she killed a child. And so how do you go back to be the mother of the nation when in all that chronology and Western media, local media, every media, international media takes you as you killed a child, and they deliberately remove all images of you being in the presence of children. And for me, then it is to say, you know, the work of allowing the filmmakers that came into the room to tell the stories is such a revolutionary act in itself. And I hope all of you who made this film see yourselves as just having made HerStory, but as being revolutionary, because the images that you chose were just so revolutionary in telling a narrative that really crushes, you know, all the narratives that are there. But I want to talk about care work in a deeply personal manner. So my mother was a nurse, and you know, most nurses, they come out at 6 o'clock, I don't know. But when I was young, I knew as a child that by the time my mother comes home, food must be cooked, the kitchen must be clean, the stove welcomed over, the fire must have, you know, must be blazing, and the urn, and it's not an electric urn, by the way, with hot water is hot. And we all grew up as children who were brought up, especially by nurses, as knowing our mothers as very strict. And you know, my son said something to me not so long ago, and he was in tears, poor soul. And he was saying, you know, I see just how much you are with other people, how everybody else, when they need you, you are there, but not for me. And of course I denied it. Because that's the power of angel being a mother. Shut up! But I'm revisiting this story because when in one of the panels they spoke about emotional work as work that is made invisible. And I look at my mother, the nurse, and I hear today about the emotional work that nurses had to do at home. I hold my mother with kindness. Because once you had been in an environment that asks for your emotion, and You don't want to come into a house with snotty children. You don't want to come into a house with things that are not in order. And I really am revisiting what my son was telling me about, can you just let me be out of order and rush to me in my disorderliness? Because I see you doing that for other people. And I never thought of that my work also involved emotional labor that nobody recognizes or even names it as emotional labor. So for me, what was important about that conversation was even giving me the language, not only to understand what my son was trying to communicate with me, but also what my mother could not give me. Because isn't it in this new books now, they say, oh, you can't pour from an empty cup. Or say, okay, I'm gonna go to a spa treatment because I can't pour from an empty cup. But I think what politicized it today for me was the idea that there is so much labor that we did. And you know, because God really is a black woman and has a sense of humor, yes. While I was in that room looking pretty, and so my son needed medical attention. And so I had Zinkler take an Uber, and I was WhatsApping Zinkler the medical aid card, and I was saying to her, deal with it, so that I can do the labor that is required here. And I was just like, you know what? God, you must be a black woman with a sense of humor, because as I'm getting my lesson about emotional labor and its impact on those that we love, because these women that are so much to other people, let us think about their children, because sometimes they can't go home and be that for their own families. So the labor and the price that we pay by doing the emotional thinking is so much more, even for those that are around us, you know. And so for me, language and naming things as they are is such a gift.